Continuing our history for Black History Month, and we want to give you something that you've probably never heard anywhere else. This is another eyewitness to Dade's battle, a man known as Dembo Factor. And this photo from the New York Public Library, from the Kenneth Porter collection. He's actually the elderly man here in the center, standing in the center, but we'll tell you more about that in a minute. And Dembo Factor has an interesting history. He's, according to his account, he was at Dade's battle on December 28th, 1835, under the leadership of Micanopy. He was an aide to Micanopy, where the Seminoles totally defeated Major Dade's army command and wiped out nearly all of the 110 soldiers. Only about three of them escaped and made it back to Fort Brooke. Oh, back to this picture. That's an old photo, but that's Earl DeBerry and then Ralph Smith. And so, yeah, some of my friends who I spent many years doing the reenactments with. So, anyway, Dembo Factor, he was captured at Fort Jupiter when the Army captured several hundred Seminoles and their black allies. He's listed as a on the list of Negroes who have been captured by the troops at Fort Jupiter, Florida on the 22nd of February, 1838 to the present date. And he's on the list as a yeah, I zoomed in under Slaves Owned by Nellie Factor. He's number 88, I believe. Dembo Factor, it says his age is 30, so that would mean he'd be born about 1808. So there's different dates for his when he was born, but that's not too important. He was young and at his prime during Dade's battle and took an active part in the war, no doubt. So he went out to Indian Territory, Oklahoma, and was out there at Fort Gibson. He was captured by slave hunters who captured, gosh, a large number of people in 1844. And he was a Dembo Factor was an ally of Coacoochee. Coacoochee was outraged at this capture and went to the Army command at Fort Gibson and was so enraged that the Army went and sent soldiers to bring them back to the fort. So he was brought back and released. But he realized with several other people that he couldn't keep evading the slave hunters who were trying to capture his people. So he went down to Mexico with Coacoochee about 1849. And so there's still a group that lives down there in Mexico, the Muskogeles. Uh, they stayed there several years, and then about 1870, the U.S. Army persuaded several of them to come back and be employed by Indian Scouts. So they are listed as Seminole Indian Scouts. And so Dembo Factor, even though considered elderly at this time in his 60s and 70s, he was a scout or guide with the command pretty much nearly until he died in 1891. And so this is his grave at the Seminole Indian Scout Cemetery near Brackettsville. Says Demdo Factor. Spelling varies, his age varies. Born in Florida, private U.S. Indian Scouts, July 1891. It's hard to read that. So anyway, he's buried with the rest of the scouts. In my last video, I covered a little bit about the cemetery in Fort Clark, Texas, where they're at. And so here's the newspaper article. It's a short one. It was originally in the St. Louis Globe Democrat and reprinted in papers all over the country. So I won't be reading that particular one. I'm reading another version. here that's just easier to read there. So sometimes they'd be reprinted weeks later in other newspapers across the country. It says the story of a former slave, the massacre of Major Dade's command by Seminole Indians, special dispatch to the Globe Democrat. And others are titled Dade Massacre, an Old Indian Negro who was with the Seminoles, tells his story. At an Indian camp near Fort Clark, there resides an old Negro who was for many years a slave among the Seminole Indians, who is probably the only living man who was with the savages at the time they attacked and massacred Major Francis L. Dade's command in the Florida War on 28th of December 1835. This old man is Dembo Factor, now some 80 years of age. It will be remembered that Dade's command of the United States soldiers was marching quietly along the road when it was suddenly assailed, and the whole number, consisting of 8 officers and 99 men, killed and wounded. And I also would add 3 Teamsters who we don't have the names of, and also Louis Pacheco, their black guide, which I'll do another video on him next week, I think. In fact, but 3 men escaped, all of whom were badly shot. And Dembo says, I know the time very well, says Dembo, for I was one of Micanopy's orderlies on that day, and the great Chief Micanopy commanded all of the Indians in Florida. The soldiers had started out for the day's march, and Major Dade had just mounted his horse and was eating a piece of cracker when Micanopy called out to him from his hiding place on the side of the road. At the sound of his voice, Dade threw up his head and Micanopy fired, the ball striking him in the throat and going through, killing him at once. The soldiers fixed up a kind of pen in which they all went and were killed one after another. Micanopy had 4 orderlies, and I was one of them, being at that time a stout and healthy young man. In old Army lingo, orderly is like the first sergeant, so he was kind of commanded some of the Seminole warriors there under command of Micanopy. When the Seminoles departed from Florida, well, removed, I should say, and went first to Indian Territory and then to a place called Laguna de Yaco in Mexico. Dembo accompanied them, always doing well according to the knowledge with him, and proving true to his friends. The old man's face always brightens up when speaking of Micanopy, who was the ablest leader the Indians ever had in Florida. Oh, he was a great chief, said the old man. My, he was a great chief, and I was his orderly. You know, the white generals had orderlies, and so did Micanopy, for he was famous in his day and ruled over the people like a great general. The old man is able to work a little, but is very poor indeed. He chops wood and does what he can, seeming to enjoy life and especially amiable after he has visited the post trader's store. He has some friends among the people at the post who help him occasionally, though it is a wonder how he ekes out an existence. Brackettsville, Texas. And so that's an interesting story. I found that interesting, especially how he describes Major Dade's death. That Major Dade was eating a cracker. It says he anyway. Major Dade was eating a piece of hardtack. uh, he he probably did him a favor shooting him after that and then say he was hit in the throat. Other accounts said Major Dade was hit in the heart. But very interesting eyewitness account, I think, and I was very glad to see that. So I don't know if Frank Laumer ever found this. Frank has written more about Dade's battle than anyone else. So this short but very interesting account of an eyewitness to Dade's battle from the other side than what we have. We have Ransom Clark's account, we have Alligator's account, and now we have a short account by Dembo Factor. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.